Howdy, folks. I'm doing this on my phone because I did a live on YouTube, but I was trying to edit it and add the links and stuff, and it disappeared. So, I have a big announcement. I have a podcast. And so far, my podcast is on, I'm making my podcast on Anchor, and it's on Anchor, Google Podcasts, Spotify, uh, Radio Public, I think it's called, and Breaker. I've never heard of those two, but the main ones that I know of is Spotify because I listen to my music on Spotify all the time. Anchor, that's the website that I make my podcast, and it's free. Um, and yeah. So, anyways, it's been talking about, I talk about anything. A lot of my episodes are political. I didn't really try to make them like that, but I did. So a lot of them are political episodes, and and then other ones are trips. I go on a trip, I come back, I make a podcast episode about the trip. Uh, for example, recently I went on uh, ride. A relative of mine is an over the road truck driver, and I went with him this past week driving across the states. Pretty amazing, a lot of sightseeing, and that episode's coming up. I took a road trip to Duluth for 2 or 3 days. That podcast is coming up. What else did I do? Um, I'm also going to talk about the election and then talk about the Minnesota governor's new laws and regulations on this whole COVID, telling us what we can and can't do again. So yeah, it's just a nice podcast. Each episode, most of my episodes are between 20 and 30 minutes ish. I don't try to uh I repeat myself too on that podcast, but I don't try to rant and rave for too long. That's why I keep it not that long, cuz who wants to hear me rant for an hour, you know? So it's about 20-30 minutes each. I think my longest one was 35 minutes, but because if I keep going longer than that, it's all just going to be ranting and I'm just going to lose my audience. After the first 10-15 minutes, my audience will just go down to nothing and no one's going to listen to the whole entire thing. So, yeah, it's a nice podcast. And then in the description of this video, I will put the links of the different podcast listening websites that you can find my podcast on. And gosh, I don't know how many, I don't even know how many episodes I have so far. I think I have like 10. I believe I have like 10 episodes, maybe more. Um, I'm looking it up right here right now. Um, I have. Why is it not? Hang on. This might take a little bit. I have 8. I have 8 episodes so far. And in each episode, I was saying, welcome to episode 8 or welcome to episode 5. But from now on, I'm just going to say, welcome to another episode because I'm going to lose track of how many episodes I got after a while. So, it's called the AJ Podcast. The AJ Podcast. That's the name of it. And like I said, you can find it on Anchor, Spotify. Anchor is where I make my podcast. Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Breaker, and Radio Public. Those two, I have no idea. Breaker and Radio Public, I've never heard of them before, but whatever. So anyways, those are the 5 websites that my podcast is on so far. I hope you check it out. I know most of it is ranting, but sometimes you gotta get some stuff off your chest, you know? You have a bad day, you're stressed out, you gotta get off your chest somehow. So I hope you go and listen to my podcast. More episodes are coming out. I'm not done here. More are coming out. I know I haven't been making YouTube videos for a while, but that's because of all this. I've been making a podcast. I've been traveling, work. Well, right now for a couple weeks I might be I'm jobless, so that's not an excuse, but I mean beforehand, because I haven't made a YouTube video in what, a year? Yeah, I was working at a bar. My previous job was working at a bar 7 days a week. Then I was making podcast episodes maybe once a month. And then I was traveling. I was taking vacations. I had a relative's wedding a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, I had a lot of things going on. So that's why you haven't seen any YouTube videos from me lately. So, that's why. So, I'm glad I'm back on YouTube. I don't know how often it's going to be again, but just wanted to let you know I have a podcast, the AJ Podcast. Maybe you guys can think of a fancier name for it. Most of them are political episodes. Some of them are my travels. Talk about my travels. If you guys can think of a different podcast name for me, let me know in the comments below. So in the description, I'm going to have the link to my podcast. Right now, it's called the AJ Podcast. If you guys can think of a really good, wow, standout name for my podcast, put it in the comments below, and I'll see what you guys come up with. So, thanks for watching. Thanks in advance for listening to my podcast, and I will talk to you later. Have a good night. Bye.